26 people dead in Sutherland Springs, Texas, shot to death in church by a militant atheist who hates Christians. Yet Senator Elizabeth Warren blames the attack on Christians and the GOP. Talk about victim blaming. I'm Liz Wheeler, and this is my final point. Senator Elizabeth Warren took to Twitter following the horrific attack in Texas to blame the GOP, blame the weapon, and condemn our prayers for the victims and their families. She tweeted, "How many kids must die of gun violence on playgrounds and streets every day with no attention at all before we wake up to what's happening? Thoughts and prayers are not enough, GOP. We must end this violence. We must stop these tragedies. People are dying while you wait." Thoughts and prayers are not enough? Yeah, forgive me if I'm not going to take spiritual guidance on taking action from the party who celebrates taking the lives of 1 million unborn babies every year. Senator Warren, all the victims of this attack were believing Christians who worshiped God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. See, this is where you and I differ, where you are disconnected from the majority of the American people. You don't think praying is taking action. I believe prayer makes a difference. And so do millions and millions of Americans, including the Christians who were murdered for their faith in God at this church. Senator Warren goes on, "I'm heartsick for the victims, families, and community of Sutherland Springs, but I'm more than heartsick, I'm angry. How many more people must die at churches or concerts or schools before we stop letting the NRA control this country's gun policies?" Every place you mentioned, Senator Warren, churches, schools, concerts, and you might as well add to that list, college campuses, temples, movie theaters, post offices, malls, elementary schools, all of those places are gun-free zones. Senator Warren, how many more people must die in gun-free zones before we stop letting Democrats who enacted those gun-free zones leave us vulnerable to evil men who want to kill us? Let me remind you, Senator, we have gun control already. Texas has gun control. Firearms are tightly regulated, and it was illegal for this attacker to be in possession of a firearm. Convicted felons are prohibited from possessing firearms, and guess what? This attacker was court-martialed in the United States Air Force, and that is equal to a felony. Did that stop him from waging his attack? No, it didn't, because laws don't stop lawbreakers. He broke the law as murderers do, because murderers don't care about the law. Gun control laws don't stop criminals from committing crimes, but gun control laws make innocent Americans sitting ducks. Senator Warren, you also didn't mention what stopped this attack. Why not? Why didn't you mention that this attacker was stopped by a legal gun-owning citizen who grabbed his own firearm and chased the attacker away? Why didn't you mention that? 1 week ago, liberals were beside themselves. It is shameful, they said, for President Trump to push his pet policies in the wake of a horrible tragedy. That's what you told us. But now, 26 people are dead, and the first reaction from Democrats is to shove their political agenda down our throats, to attack our beliefs and force us to mimic their talking points. That government is greater than God, prayer is for peasants, guns are the problem, and gun control is the answer. Well, Senator Warren, with all due respect, you could not be more wrong. And that's my final point. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you liked the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, have a good night.
Hey, welcome back to another Facebook Live. I haven't done one of these in a really, really long time. So good to talk to you all again. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. But listen, I want to make 2 quick points about liberals and the whole gun control debate. Don't ever, ever, ever trust liberals, ever, on gun control for 2 very specific reasons. And don't ever forget these because they're important. Number 1, they lie to you all the time. They lie to you about gun control. I can prove it to you. Get into a debate with any liberal about gun control. One of the first examples they will cite to you is Australia. While simultaneously on Australia, citing the Australia example, while simultaneously saying they don't want to confiscate your guns. Folks, that's what happened in Australia. Now, I bring this up, and I covered this on my podcast today, the Dan Bongino Show. For those of you who aren't subscribers, go check it out. But I covered it in a little more length on my podcast today. What I find incredible is they'll actually contradict themselves on social media, apparently unaware that other people can see what's happening on social media. Newsflash to our liberal friends. It's not an email. It's social media. Other people can see it. So when you say to me and you respond to me on Twitter, we're not looking to confiscate your guns. That's just you crazy conservative conspiracy theorists. And then you respond 5 minutes later saying, but Australia was really great. Look what happened in Australia where they confiscated guns. That kind of says to me you're lying or you're just really stupid. There's no third option there. It's A or B, lying or really stupid. I'm not really sure what the third option would be. So they lie to you, so you have zero credibility. So this is kind of a cue for our liberal friends out there. This is the reason we tune you out on this gun control thing. Not to mention you politicize everything moments after the, I mean, the blood hasn't even been washed from the streets and you maniacs are already over Twitter blaming us for it. We're not giving up our rights for you. Just because some homicidal maniac did this awful thing in Texas and other places, you know, we have to pretend that we have to protect ourselves too. We're not, I mean, what do you want us to pretend this all didn't happen? You know, we didn't do anything wrong. We're not forfeiting away our God-given rights to protect ourselves and our families because some maniac did something in Texas and because you have a political agenda. We're not doing that. I'm sorry. And thank God for the NRA guy who was trained, by the way, who took out this gunman. Secondly, they lecture us, you know, and they lecture us and they have no credibility at all. So it's another reason to tune these liberals out. First they lie to you and then they lecture you. What do I mean by that? Well, who are the people who are the loudest mouths on gun control? You know, it's the bubble people, the bubble boys and the bubble women who live in the coastal areas, you know, the elites in California and in New York and in D.C., you know, areas that begin with generally a 1 or a 9 in the zip code. Those are the people who do it, and the Hollywood people. So the cultural elites, the politicians, and the Hollywood folks lecture us. But here's the problem with that. After they lie to you, they lecture you, but they lecture you from a fake moral high ground. They lecture you from a high ground they don't have. Why? Because these are the very same people protected by people with, wait for it, guns. So they get the guns to protect themselves, but we don't get the guns, the great unwashed out there, protect ourselves and our families because they're already protected, so this doesn't impact them. It's kind of like the old joke about taxes, right? The only people who advocate for higher taxes are people who are so ridiculously wealthy that it doesn't matter, and people who don't pay taxes anyway. Everybody else cares except for those two groups of people. It's the exact same thing on guns. They have no credibility. So tune these liberal fools out. Tune them out. They've lost the gun argument. It's over. I covered it on my podcast today in depth, 5 or 6 reasons why the gun argument, the gun control argument for them, it's done. They will never win it again. It has no, by the way, just in case you think I'm making this up, here's a poll on this. I cited this in my podcast today. Back in 1959, 60% of people supported a handgun ban. That's a lot. You know how many people support it now? 23%. You lost. You lost because you lied to us and you lectured us instead of talking to us. Stop treating us like deplorables and the great unwashed and a bunch of idiot gun-toting freaks. And maybe we'd be open to a conversation. But until then, zip it. We're not interested. Thanks for tuning in.
Why do we know so much, and thank heaven we do, about this atrocity and still so little about the one that happened in Las Vegas more than a month ago?
Well, this tragedy here, this fits the models we have from my experience in the Secret Service of targeted violence, where you've seen indicators in the past. We're seeing, you know, you and I have talked about the Vegas shooting, but multiple appearances here, and we said it doesn't make any sense because where are all the witnesses? Where are all the people coming out saying, you know, I saw something on Facebook that was strange. He said something at the local deli that was unusual. Where are they? The answer is nowhere. Nobody's found them yet, or they're there and we just don't know about them. But in this case, we're seeing a litany of people come out and say, oh, there were odd Facebook posts. There's obviously a pattern of violent behavior. And as I've said repeatedly, when you look at models of targeted violence, Tucker, there's always a trail, always a trail. It's very rare, like in the Vegas shooting, where there's almost nothing there and it's a vacuum.
So you don't think the investigation is different, but the crime is different. The perpetrator's different.
Yeah, I mean, this guy seems to fit the pattern of people who go out there and targeted violence, assassinations, school shootings, homicidal maniacs like this who decide to go into church. And we don't know the motive yet, but it appears there's some connection there. It appears that his desire, to take out revenge or whatever it may have been on a family member or an in-law, he just uses violence as a way to, show his power. And that's what he did. He took out 20-plus innocent people in his rampage there. But that fits the models we've seen in the past.
Yes. What are the lessons for the rest of us of this?
Tucker, it pains me to say this, but churches are inherently vulnerable places. You have the right to protect yourself. There are wolves out there. There's a big conflict of visions, if I can steal a line from Thomas Sowell here. The left seems to believe that we can somehow legislate the evil out of people's hearts. You won't. Do not be a sheep. If you are a church, if you are a synagogue, you are in a uniquely vulnerable spot. It pains me to say that, but we live in a different time. You have an ingress, an exit, and an entrance point in the back. Therefore, everybody comes out of the same spot. Right. Tucker, where's everybody's attention in church? Ahead. Where's the shooter going to come in? He's going to come in the back. You know, you also have the lack of cover or concealment. There's nowhere to hide. Why? Because people don't hide in church. They have to see what's going on in the altar. There's nowhere to go. It doesn't give me any joy in telling you that, but in 12 years as a Secret Service agent, if you are in a church or a house of worship, you have an obligation now to realize that we live in a different world. It's sad. These are black swan events. But the penalty for being involved in a black swan event like this is death. This has happened multiple times. You have to secure and harden up your location. I'm sorry I had to say that, but it is absolutely true.
Are mourning those 26 people in Congress. They decided to take a moment of silence just to remember the babies, the moms, the dads, the kids that were killed there. And there was a representative from California that decided to walk out during the moment of silence, and he posted a video online explaining why.
Here's a little of it from his Facebook.
I can't do this again. I've been to too many moments of silences. In just my short career in Congress, 3 of the worst mass shootings in U.S. history have occurred. I will not be silent. What we need is action. We need to pass gun safety legislation now. Behind me is the House of Representatives chambers. I urge us to pass reasonable gun safety legislation, including a universal background check law supported by 80% of Americans, a ban on assault rifles, and a ban on bump stocks. We need to do that. We cannot be silent. We need to act now.